Yeah, good morning. Let's resume our discussion. In the previous class, we have discussed about deep neural network architectures, convolutional neural networks architectures with skip connections. So we have seen through mathematical expression that in deep neural networks with skip connections, if we organize the batch normalization, ReLU, and convolutions in a particular manner, then the output feature map can be expressed as simply the input feature map plus some learning component, that's residual learning component, and that can be effectively written mapping the features of the deeper layers to the shallow layers or the shallow layers to the deeper layers. From that, what we can see through backpropagation is that if we have a derivative in the output layer, that directly gets added to the derivatives at the shallow layers, and that will help us to not to have the non-zero, like zero gradient updates at the shallow layers, or to have the non-zero updates at the shallow layers. This is what the feature that can be given by deep neural networks. And we can also see that through bottleneck layer, we can effectively use 1x1 convolutions in combination with the other convolution blocks to have the computationally efficient implementation of the resonant blocks. Okay, so if you have any questions, please ask. Otherwise, we will move on to the discussion on the next network architectures. Okay, so in the previous class, we have also discussed about squeeze and excitation network, where we have seen that the aim of squeeze and excitation network is to give different weighting to the different channels, or give different attention to the different channels, and that is done through learning. The learning is done through the global energy of each of the channel. If once we take based on the global energies, we see the reorganization of global energies to a fully connected network. And this will help us to learn the appropriate weight to put to each of the feature map. And this gives the, so this is a reweighted feature maps. Okay, the number of feature maps and the dimensions doesn't change. What is being changed is the weight is given to each of the channels. Okay, and that is essentially learned through this. And this can also be effectively learned through idea from the bottleneck layers. So if you would like to learn like with less computational complexity, then what's the suggestion? Can any one of you tell quickly before I write here? So we would like to still have the channel attention to be given, but we would like to make some computationally efficient implementation of this. So any suggestion on this? Okay, this is fully connected layer. But before that, what we can do is we can have the fully connected layer giving the output dimensions as 1x1x C by R. Okay, some value R. So if C is say 256, okay, C by R may be some 16 or whatever. Okay, so in that manner, we can have the reduced dimension here. What is the advantage of having this reduced dimension? Can one of you tell?
It will reduce the number of channels required.
Yeah, it will reduce the number of channels. Fine.
Memory efficiency.
Huh?
Memory efficient, sir.
Yeah, memory efficient. Okay, so fine. If once I have this, what is the next layer I should put? So global attention will give me 1x1x C here. Okay, from that fully connected layer, 1x1x C cross 1. So what is the next layer I should put? Finally, what I want to do with this squeeze and excitation network, I want to give different weightage to the channels. So the dimensions here when I get, okay, should be what? 1x1x?
256.
Huh?
C.
C. Okay, I have to get again 1x1x C, so that when I do multiplication, I will have actually XL dash, which is 1 H cross W cross C again. Okay, so now what should I do next? What's the next layer I should put after the say this fully connected layer?
You can do 1x1 convolutions.
Yeah, I have to put another fully connected layer. Okay, such that it will bring in the dimensions from 1x1x C to 1x C by R to 1x1x C. Okay, this is one way. In fact, you can also have one more layer, which will bring in 1 cross 1 cross C by R to 1 cross 1 cross C by R. Okay, and then from 1 cross 1 cross C by R to 1 cross 1 cross C. Of course, you can have it or you need not have it, because anyway, it's essentially same. So through these two, we are essentially learning the weightage given to each of the channel. Okay, is this clear? The advantage of this 1 by C by R is, if you see the weight matrix here, W1 and W2, if you have, okay, W1 dimension is C cross C by R here. Okay, W2 dimension is C cross C by R here. Okay, and the total number of learnable parameters here is how much? 2 times, okay, C cross C by R. Right? Whereas here it is C cross C. C cross C versus 2 times C by C by R. Here R is equal to how much? If we consider this, whatever we have given, okay, R equal to 8. Is it not? 8 or 16? R equal to 16. Okay, thus you have actually 8 times saving in terms of the number of parameters. Is this clear? Okay, I'm assuming.
Sir, small question.
Yeah, please ask.
Instead of the second fully connected layer, can't we use 1 cross 1 convolutions?
See, this is anyway 1 cross 1 only, right? So it's nothing.
Oh, okay.
There is no, we don't have actually images here. Okay, what we have is only samples, right? So anyway, we are bringing it's a fully connected layer. So here we are not using, okay, you are asking instead of the fully connected layer, can I use convolution layer with 1 cross 1? Is that
Yes, sir.
you're asking?
Yes, sir.
Okay. See, convolution, if you do, dimensions doesn't change, right? So you want to say the elements itself are, now if you see this is a fully connected layer, if you have 2 dimensional maps, then 1 cross 1 convolution, 3 cross 3 convolution, all that makes sense or difference. Okay, these are no 2 dimensions here. These are all 1 values. So you should, so of course, instead of fully connected layer, you can have convolution layer to learn this. That you can do. That means you can have actually these 3 convolution of 3 cross 1 if you use. Okay, that can be used to learn this. Again, so another 3 cross 1 if you use, that may be used to learn this, and so on. You can use instead of fully connected layers, convolution layers. But the thing is, why we are using fully connected layers here are, we want to mix the whole energies and want to see actually a kind of learning for the across the maps. Okay, so we don't want to mix only the maps which are nearby. So in fact, there is no, here there is not much significance between a map that is in the top and closer to it versus the bottom map. So there is no spatial significance in the maps, right? So for that reason, here fully connected layers are used. Is that clear? Hope it is clear. Okay, so but however, there are some applications, especially 3D kind of applications, where the maps, even the channels are the 3 dimension in the other dimension, not just in XY dimension. 3rd dimension also, there is a spatial component. So closeness in the 3rd dimension also is important. So there we use not 2D convolutions, we will use 3D convolutions. So therein actually 3D convolution means not just XY neighborhood, and Z neighborhood also is taken to give the next neuron output. Hope this is clear. Okay, so I am moving on to the discussion on the next network that we would like to discuss, that is dense nets. Also, see, as we discussed in the last class, dense nets are in some sense variants of, you can consider as variants of resonance, in the sense that they also try to see effective back propagation of the gradients. And the further aim of the dense nets is, see, resonance have 152 layers and 1000 layers. So they are very deeper architectures. Now the question is, with the effective gradient backpropagation and appropriately designing the architecture, can we reduce the depth of the network and still get as accuracy as the resonates. Okay, or the naive skip connection based networks. Okay, so we would like to have the lesser depth, okay, compared to resonates kind of architectures, yet higher accuracy or matching accuracy. So what these DenseNets then did, or the architectures have is, so initially you may have actually H cross, W cross, C, the layers. So if you learn through some procedure or whatever, through some convolution layer, so you may have here actually say H cross or W cross C1 maps. So what DenseNets does is they concatenate in each of the layer the maps of the previous layer as well. So here they are concatenated. Okay, so essentially, if you see the output of this layer, if you consider, there are two things. One output is in that layer, whatever you have. Second is also so concatenate. Okay, and then both together will give us the set of maps. So the total set of maps that we get, so this is the concatenation operation here. So probably I will put here. Okay, and like this. So through this, what the number of feature maps I get as W cross H cross, how much? C plus C1. Okay, and this is again, say, for example, the total number of maps I have got. Again, apply, say, some kind of convolution. This is convolution. Okay, so again, apply convolution. And then what I may get actually this through convolution, I may get again some maps. H cross, W cross, okay, C, C2. Fine. So then again concatenate this. So what the total number of maps that I may have are say H cross, W cross, C plus C1 plus C2. Okay, like that. So essentially we will be concatenating all the feature maps of the previous layer. Okay, so effectively what we are doing, so then finally if there is some back propagation happens, okay, so whatever the dose A by dou XL at this whatever, that will have actually component directly here, and since we have concatenated the earlier map, okay, so the gradient of portion of the gradient that corresponds to the earlier maps or the initial maps also will come there. So here gradient back propagation directly doesn't come from the previous layer to the or the deeper layers to the initial layers, but a portion of it will come. Defined by or decided by the concatenated feature maps or the feature maps of that layer. But what's the issue with this kind of architecture? If we have this kind of architecture, okay, we are all keep concatenating the feature maps. For implementation, what we do is keep concatenating the feature maps. What is the issue with this kind of architecture? Yeah, please tell me at least one reason.
Maybe computational intensive.
Yeah, very good.
Storage.
So if we keep concatenating, the number of feature maps keep growing, okay, and you have to somehow manage at some point of time for the computational complexity. So what they do is after some such concatenations, they consider this as one dense block. Okay, so if you have actually the input image, X, say our input feature maps XL, assume this is XL and this is XL plus 1. Okay, so input feature maps if you have and you have got XL or XL plus 1, then what they do is, what's the solution you can suggest?
We can use 1 cross 1.
That's all. Okay, you can apply actually bottleneck layer. 1 cross 1 convolution. Then you can decide again how many number of maps you need. Okay, so if you wish to put again H cross, okay, W cross C only, you can do that. Okay, so this is actually XL plus 1. If I say XL plus 1 dash is again H cross W cross C only. Okay, and then you can go here, and then finally you can get again in this next layer. So whole dense block. Followed by bottleneck layer, 1 cross 1 convoluted block. Okay, and this will yield again to say X dash L plus 2, which is again, it can be H cross W cross C only. You can maintain the depth, or of course you can slightly increase the depth as well. So in this way you can maintain the number of feature maps. Okay, but the only thing is, in between each of the dense blocks, you can see that the like back propagation is happening through 1 cross 1 convolution. Yeah. Okay, so any questions here?
Let me check it. Actually. Some items maybe.
Yeah, somebody is telling something. Okay. Fine.
Let me check it. Yeah, sure. Because we have cleared, I think. It was cleared from.
Okay. So let's see some of the
Okay.
visualizations for this. The other architectures which are of importance, I will just
Okay.
here, and then we will see that. So
Okay.
wide residual networks, network in networks,
Uh-huh.
and ResNext kind of architectures. So one advantage or one point to discuss about these things are, so as I mentioned, with even the less deep architectures, they're able to get roughly the same accuracies as ResNets. So that we will see. Okay. So now let us see wide residual networks. The main idea of wide residual networks is, see, anyway, we know that in each residual block, so you have actually, if we see one, say, if we start with XL, so you have anyway skip connection. Previously, you had actually some convolutions here. Okay, this can be, say, either 1 cross 1 convolution or 5 cross 5 convolution. And you have another convolution block here. Okay, so what the idea of, and there is a skip connection here to get the next block. So that is actually from this, whatever you get is XL plus 1. Right? Conv means all things are there, batch normalization, ReLU activation, okay, and convolution. All put together is what is conv I am writing here. This conv can be 1 cross 1, okay, or it is like 5 cross 5. If you would like to take computationally efficiently, you can have 1 cross 1. What is wide in wide residual networks is nothing but the convolution block. So instead of say whatever previously you may have actually say here H cross W cross 256 if you have. Okay, what the idea here is actually if you have H cross W cross C. So the convolution block here may be say either 5 cross 5 if I put. It is the number of channels will be some S times C. That means it is wider, or W times C. Much wider than the usual convolution, the number of channels in the residual networks. So this can also be, so for computationally efficient kind of architecture, 1 cross 1. And here it can be 5 cross 5 cross, again W into C. Okay. So this is wide residual networks. What is wide is the number of channels in the convolution. And finally, if you want to bring in to the same number of channels for adding purpose, okay, what we do? We can simply have actually one more 1 cross 1 convolution here, okay, of not wider nature. And this only will have actually, say, output being 256 maps. And you can directly add it to get again H cross W cross C. This is the idea of wide residual networks. With this, they could show that they have actually good performance in even with not like a less deeper architecture compared to ResNet being very deeper architecture. And next is another variation of it. So the idea here is instead of having wider convolution layer with more maps, we can also have actually parallelly running convolution layers. So if you have actually Excel here, so you can have one convolution, say one feature extraction here. You can have another, say this also can be another feature extraction here. Another feature extraction here, and so on. Each may be with some skip connections. In fact, I think one skip connection may be sufficient. Okay, and so on. Finally, you will get to the XL+1. You can decide on how much, so how many number of parallel layers you can put. So each of these papers, when they develop the method, what they do is they have the basic idea. They will experiment with different variations of the convolution layers and then different variations of the around their idea, and try to see experimentally which is performing mostly through cross validation and so on, and also try to give or try to have some intuition in developing them. So that's the rough evaluation, how the architectures get evolved. So they may have, say, for example, in some cases, the clear idea through some mathematical procedure that this will be a good architecture and then develop. In some cases, they may develop the architecture and then try to see through evaluation study. Okay, and then variations in the around the develop proposal. Okay, they would like to see experimentally which is performing better. So these are the different ways in which people develop. So we will probably stop here and then see the slides and come back for the discussion. If you have any questions, you can ask now. Let me share the slides. So let us discuss the DenseNet first. So as I mentioned, I will not go through the like details of these architectures, but I would like to give you some clarity on how the methods have been developed. Okay, so this here is just a pictorial depiction of the experiments that they have made from respective papers. So as I mentioned, each of the developments will go around a proposal and then trying to give different variations to the around this proposal and try to experiment which is a better proposal. Okay, so they have varied here, especially in ResNet paper, after the ResNet paper. So in which way the skip connection has to be. Okay, so they have finally experimented that with identity mapping, in sense that directly bringing XL+1 a skip connection to Excel will give us a better advantage. And the appropriate placement of these blocks also being experimented. So I will skip the details. And finally, as I mentioned, they will demonstrate with the same base architecture how much improvement that they can acquire or get with respect to the proposal that they made. And this just gives you an idea on how they experiment. Usually they will experiment on ImageNet first for all the classification frameworks, and also on the CIFAR10 dataset. These are wide residual networks. As I mentioned, actually the what is wide is on the channel number of channels used in convolution layers in each of the residual blocks. So that's what you can see here. They can have wider convolution blocks or wider one blocks and convolution blocks with dropouts. So they will do around, as I mentioned, different variations of it and then try to see which is the best optimized blocks of for the overall performance of the network. And they compare also with respect to the existing networks, existing methods by that time. And this is the squeeze and excitation network. As you can see here, they're trying to give different attention to the different channel or different weights to the different channel. Squeeze and excitation network can also come with the inception module, where they can have inception module where you can see that actually across different channel, like post to fine kind of feature extraction we do through 3x3 convolutions, 1x1 convolution, and 5x5 convolutions, and get the better features. And that after that we may have a skip connection for effectively having a back propagation. And these kind of blocks may repeat. So this is inception with squeeze and excitation is also very famous, or skip connection is also very famous. And resonates with inception are usually are known for giving very high accuracies in the classification performance as well. So they subsequently have inception V1, V2, V4, V5 like that. And this is actually residual connections plus squeeze and excitation blocks. So the squeeze and excitation blocks essentially gives different channel weightage, right? So they can come with either inception modules or with the residual blocks as well. Of course, they can also come together. All can come together. So then, as I mentioned, there is another net, so called squeeze net, which is mainly made for mobile platforms or for very computationally efficient architecture. So this what it does is it squeezes through 1x1 filters and then expands through 1x1 and 3x3 filters. It's like a inception module and 1x1 module, inception module, 1x1 module kind of thing. So each of them they call with slightly different names and then design the building blocks and make the whole network. This is the idea of dense nets, where you can see that the feature maps keep increasing from within the dense block. Okay, and then after a while, the feature maps say each times they may increase by 16 or some fixed number of feature maps. So initially, if I start with say 64 feature maps, I may decide to learn only 16 feature maps at the next layer. So I will be increasing 16 feature maps in the next layer. And then in the subsequent layer, 16 into 2, 32 feature maps, 16 into 3, like 48, and then 64 feature maps like that. Or I may decide to increase, say they may decide to increase 64, 64 like. So once they increase the feature maps through concatenation, please note that the difference between skip connections and here is we are concatenating here feature maps, there we are using the addition of the feature maps. Okay, so the difference is also there in back propagation. Okay, so whenever there is a back propagation here, these maps will directly have the back propagation and that will be carried out to this layer. Okay, and the rest of the maps doesn't have any contribution here in the previous layer. Okay, like that. So this is the one dense block as I mentioned. And this dense block essentially, as you can see, the concatenation operation is shown here like this. Okay, and after that we will have 1x1 convolution to reduce the overall number of feature maps and then or maintain the feature maps, number of feature maps. Okay, and you may also have pooling layer in between and then another dense block. This typical architecture for the dense net. Dense net is also known to be very good architecture, giving very high accuracies in classification with, as I mentioned, with lesser number of layers than resonant networks. So I'm skipping the minute details as in between you can have batch normalization, ReLU and the convolutions, and these convolutions can also be like bottleneck layers. Okay. So if you have any questions on these, you can ask now. Otherwise, I will probably try to show a couple of other slides to conclude our discussion on network architectures.
Yes, a small question.
Yeah.
So sir, there are so many different networks that we can use for any problem, but how do we know which one is actually suitable for one particular task?
Yeah.
Or is there some kind of a all good neural network that works for everything?
Okay. So these mainly, these networks are evolved in view of that as well itself, like all good kind of thing. But only thing is, it depends upon the application. Some of the applications, deeper networks are more welcome or important. In some of the applications, deeper networks are not necessary. Of course, it's a common demonstration or a generic understanding that deeper networks extract high level features and perform better in terms of feature extraction classification, but not necessarily all frameworks need deeper neural networks. And if you need deeper networks, the suggestion is we should go for either with skip connections or with the dense blocks. And they may also be along with inception modules in between, or say while designing them. So that's the overall idea. So the other kind of suggestion is in computer vision, what we generally are interested is to see the information at different scales or resolutions. So in the, for such things, inception based networks are good, or there are other kind of networks which are referred to as pyramidal networks, pyramidal network architectures, where essentially just like what we do in computer vision, there also feature maps are seen at different resolutions, explicitly brought from say H cross W cross C to H by 2 cross W cross C, and then H by 4 cross W by 4 cross C, and so on. And we analyze whatever the feature extraction or whatever at each of these scales, each of these resolutions, and again merge them, the information from each of these different pyramidal layers. Also, that kind of architectures are known to be performing well for many of the computer vision applications. And they also shown to be a little more robust across the attacks. That attacks means what happens is in these deep neural networks, they are learned in a particular fashion through some loss functions. So if somebody knows the loss function and uses the loss function itself to shuffle or slightly jitter the weight elements moving towards the maximum cost instead of the minimum cost, then what happens? Visually they may look exactly the same, whatever the results they are producing, but the original image, if you bring with some say through backpropagated learning, the original image and the image after this attack will look almost similar. But if this image is given, which is actually had the if you bring in this image to the network, it will act in such a way that these weights are not appropriate for this, okay, kind of thing. So in that case, what may happen is that it may go to the wrong class, completely wrong class. So for such attacks also, it is known that the pyramidal architectures are good. So, but however, there is no very clear demarcation that these networks are good for this kind of problem. But if the problem, usually initial investigations are with VCC and GoogleNet for most of the developments. The reason being they are little light networks. In fact, VCC is known to be a simpler network for understanding. It doesn't have any blocks it's just convolutions and poolings. So given that it is the simplest architecture, which is performing quite well. So for that reason, it is known to be a good backbone network. Similarly, inception modules are also known to be good because they have actually computationally very efficient networks. These are some guidelines only.
Yes, sir. But so far in whatever metrics, whenever they compare models, they generally use a benchmark data set like ImageNet or the hand digit data set. So say if we are working on some fresh data set, is it necessary for us to look at again all these networks, compare performances for all of them, and then
Yeah. So it may not be all the time necessary. So usually, if you know, say if it is, if you have large data, deeper networks are welcome. You can directly take a deeper network and then try to use it and train it and test it. If you don't have that much data, okay, then if you then you need to compromise. Either you should go for a shallow network and train from scratch, or you need to fine tune well, or you need to go for a deeper network and fine tune only the last layers. So then you need to take a call on which network to select. But if you have good amount of data, you can directly go for a deeper network to test. But most of the things, what happens is, even for those who learn, those who are very familiar will directly pick a deeper network or a best network, for example, in terms of the accuracies, or for the application that they're thinking, which may work better. But when especially the learners develop, they will not directly pick, or it's not advisable to pick a deeper network and then see what's happening and so on. So in that case, it's advisable to go for a some not very deeper network and then move on. ResNet 50 is known to be good for start as a backbone, and then subsequently you can see experimentation with ResNet 152. That's the other way of looking at, even if you consider with ResNet blocks.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just go through the slides by Professor Fifili team as well, and just to have the complete picture of what we have discussed, or complementary visuals there, visual understanding from there. So as you can see, there are some other kind of networks. There are several network architectures that have been evolved, and some are famous, but some are not very famous. So some different ideas are say network in network. So they don't want to stick to a particular architecture. So they would like to put in a fully connected layers also in between and so on. So this is what we have discussed as residual networks with identity mapping. The sequence also matters here. As you can see, we start with batch normalization, ReLU, and then convolution. And then again, it ends with the feature extraction. And subsequently, the next block will start with the batch normalization. Through that, what will happen is actually the features directly gets added at the just after the convolution layer in each of the blocks. And these give better performance than simpler ResNets. And this is wide residual networks, as we discussed before. These will have wider number of feature maps in the each of the ResNet blocks. So they have experimented how much wide it should be and so on. Give some rough estimates of what the accuracies you can expect with computational complexity compromise. So the other kind of networks, as we discussed, are say aggregate residual networks, or ResNext kind of networks, where you can have actually several parallel paths of the feature extraction and skip connection. So in each of them are very good publications, given that they experimented very well with the architecture they have taken, and then finally suggest some experimental based guidelines and some theoretical aspects as well. So when you have actually deeper networks, you can also have the dropouts, not necessarily at the like the neurons, but you may have now at the whole layer itself. So these are some idea of having a network with stochastic depth, or dropping out the whole layer itself in between. So you can arbitrarily do that, and then see, this is again model ensemble of different networks. With like, if I drop out by 50%, I am just assuming that instead of 152 depth, only say half of that depth I am using for my calculations. Similarly, as I mentioned, the accuracies has come down with respect to these architectures, and there are some networks which use ensemble of networks. So if you have actually, say for example, DenseNet, for example, is complementary information if it is giving with respect to the with respect to ResNet, we may have the ensemble of networks. At this, say in 2016, they made ensemble of different network architectures. So it may be GoogleNet, Inception module with ResNet, so and the ResNet and so on. And this is squeeze and excitation networks. And the other networks, they imitate many of the signal processing aspects as well in the design of networks. So one such imitation is on the design of fractal networks. Those who know a little bit on the multi-resolution analysis or wavelet analysis, what we do there is we analyze the signal at say whole resolution once. We analyze at the half of the resolution. So that means each block may be analyzed differently and then those features may be added, or the dimensions may be reduced to half and then we analyze them. So we may, and then again in pyramidal structure, so we can analyze it, say full resolution, half the resolution, 1/4 the resolution, and add whole information. So this also imitates in some sense like that. So you can have direct convolutions to extract one set of features. You can divide the, say, you can have actually instead of one set of convolutions, you can have two set of convolutions here. You can have actually 4 sets of convolutions to extract features. So these features are all concatenated. Now, if you see here, feature extraction at direct level, okay, and then 2 levels of features, 3 levels, 4 levels of features, and then 8 levels of features, all these concatenated will give different complementary features. So this is one block of this fractal network. So like that, you can have actually different blocks and different combination of features. So this is DenseNet, pictorially depicted in slightly different manner. And squeeze and excitation net. As I mentioned, it's a very lightweight network with a very less number of parameters. And since the network architecture, there are several network architectures, and the layers, number of layers at each of the architecture are the number of layers and the number of channels at each layer, and many other parameters, height and width of the layer itself. So many other parameters can also be considered as a hyperparameters or learning parameters. There are some methods which are focused on the network architectural search itself. Okay, so they try to design like through exhaustive search or through some procedures, systematic procedures. We would like to evolve and say that these are good optimal number of filters we can use, and optimal height and width, and optimal filter number of filters, all those aspects. So the filter dimensions, and then the stride, all the hyperparameters of these convolution networks can be made as a appropriate statistic search for the neural network architecture design. So I will stop the discussion on the network architectures here. In the next class, we will see the discussion on the application of these convolution networks to computer vision problems. So especially we'll take a couple of computer vision applications, starting from segmentation, and then object detection, and then depth extraction, and a couple of other applications, probably tracking. And that we will discuss in the next class. Subsequently, we will be discussing on generative adversarial networks, and then recurrent neural networks. And let us see if we can discuss a little more advanced topics like transformers and conclude the course. Yeah, thank you. If you have any questions, you can ask now. Also, even on the overall curriculum or syllabus for the course, if you have any comments and questions, you can ask. We have time now a little bit. So if you want to.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, regarding the some papers, we had a doubt session to be planned, right? Like some have a doubt on that.
Right.
So when can we clarify that?
Yeah, I'm coming to permanent campus tomorrow. So shall we meet tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
Tomorrow at 2:30 to 3:30, you people are free?
Yes, sir, we are free. No, sir, I'm sorry, sir. We have a lab at 3.
Okay, so 2 to 3 is also fine. Anyway, half an hour for our discussion. So 2:30 to 3, let's tentatively plan for the discussion.
Sure, sir. Okay, sir.
So you can fix a room and tell me so that I will try to come to that room.
Okay, sir. Can we have it at lab 2, like electrical machines lab?
Okay, that's also fine. Electrical machines lab. You have one. Only thing is, if we have board and all, it is easy for me to discuss if you have any questions.
Okay. Yes, sir.
You
So
can
we can,
anyway, yeah. So,
or we can have it at, I'll look into it, sir. If it's possible, we'll have it at TC1.
yeah, okay, fine. So just let me know the room. We will gather in that room. So those
Okay, sir.
also are welcome. So if you want to discuss anything on the course and any other things, so on the overall how is going or feedback on the course, whatever you want to discuss, you are welcome to come.
Okay, sir.
Those who want to discuss the paper can come during that time. Fine. Anything
Fine.
discuss? Okay. Fine then. So for the mini projects and so on, hope you are following the timelines. Okay. So
Yes.
programming assignment, you have any questions? I think CNN based programming assignment is not yet given or given. Sumant, it's given, right? The students also can tell. Is that given or not?
It's given, sir.
Given, very good. So is there any questions on that? I used to expect lot of questions
Yes, sir.
in back propagation and so on during earlier years.
Sir, actually, there's some implementation questions, sir. So
Okay.
the template code that they gave is actually written in PyTorch. Like, however, you asked us to implement backpropagation manually, right? But
Right.
PyTorch has already inbuilt backpropagation.
Right.
So what are we expected to use here, sir?
Yeah, you should not use it. You are not expected to use inbuilt one. So you have to write with your say convolution operations.
Yes, sir. So we don't even if we don't use PyTorch and if we do with normal
NumPy libraries. Yeah, you can use NumPy libraries in between. But you can anyway you can write in between your own convolutions and so on, I think, right?
Yes, sir.
No, so if anyway, if I will ask Sumant also to come during that time. So if you have any questions on that, you can also post. So they will also be there to clarify on these aspects.
Yes, sir.
But it's expected that you have to write your own backpropagation equations, right? So you need to write like convolution through convolutions or correlations, and then pooling or unpooling. That's all. Nothing else.
Okay, sir.
Of course, you can use the gradients and other things, but you can't use the inbuilt direct gradient backpropagation.
Like, can we use just PyTorch, but use again all this manual backpropagation? Can we?
Yeah, you can do that. I think so. I think you can do that.
Okay, sir.
I think you can do in between. That should not be a problem.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, I just anyway on the exact code part, we will get the input from him. But I think it should be done because I think previously even the students were doing like that.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Any other things? Okay. So what we expect is once you complete this, so then I may ask you to apply this CNN, one of the CNN architecture. You can pick one of the architecture and apply on some of the data sets. So you can also pick the data set. I may give freedom for you to apply directly if you want to do it on say, if it usually they're all trained on ImageNet. You take the ImageNet model and through transfer learning, you can apply on one of the image classification tasks. Let it be medical image classification or say fault detection in mechanical engineering, or let it be on CFAR classification or any other classification. So let's see a couple of possibilities, and you can take one of them and then apply for transfer learning through transfer learning. That's the next exercise I'm thinking. And probably the next programming assignment I'm thinking is on the application of to one of the computer vision tasks. Again, there we will have actually a couple of computer vision tasks. You can take one of the computer vision tasks and apply. That's the other thing I'm thinking. So if we have time and bandwidth, then we can think of RNN. So here. Anyway, you are also welcome on which you want to experiment and how the programming assignments can be and so on. Okay, so you have now some idea on what the topics are and how even on the implementation aspects. So if you can also suggest so that actually we can have a better programming assignments that will help you even more. Hmm?
Yes, sir. There's a small question, sir, again in the slides.
Yeah.
You've mentioned the neural architecture search in one slide, sir. So
Yeah, right.
is that something like we do parameter tuning, right? So is it an algorithm that tunes the parameters?
Yes. In fact, I think if I'm correct, both in PyTorch and TensorFlow, or at least in one of these things, the neural architecture set is inbuilt in sense that you can enable, properly use it and design your network architecture.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, it's like, as you said, some inbuilt function or software package, they have a neural architecture set written for designing the architecture. You need to give some parameters on whatever the input, outputs, and so on. And then it will, in the range that you provide, probably it will search and give you better network architecture.
Yes, sir.
Thank you then.
Thank you, sir.